Good evening. Good evening to you, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. So good to have you join us once again for another Salem Speaks. There's so many things you could have been doing this evening, but we are so grateful to you for joining us this evening. And certainly we trust that this evening would be an educational forum for you, that some things will be said that will be able to help you as you move on in your financial life, and indeed as you prepare for, listen to this word, retirement. I know some of you really hate to hear that word, and many persons don't retire, or they don't think that they would ever get to the stage in their life where they'll be able to retire and to be able to live a comfortable life. You are in the right place at the right time this evening, because for the final time, this is our third time, Pastor Dino Cartwright, to have you here with us as we further discuss financial planning and retirement. Welcome, Dino.
Thank you again. Thank you very much.
All right, let's get right back into it. Last week, we ended as we talked about what would be the number, or what would be the amount of funds that one would need in order to retire. But what I want to ask, first of all, before we get to that number, I want you to go over that one more time. But I want you to tell us, first of all, what is retirement? What is retirement?
Retirement is that stage of your life where you're able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with whom you want to do it, because you have the ability to do it. Oftentimes, persons will ascribe or put to retirement a certain age or a certain number of years working for a place, but it really is at a place when you can live comfortably without having to put in work to help pay your daily expenses. And so that retirement is essentially a stage of life, as opposed to just an amount of years or an amount of time.
Yeah, so because most of us, particularly if you work for the civil service, if you work for government, I think that retirement, you can retire after certain amount of years.
Correct.
Something happens at 40 years, I can't remember exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to the age of 65, I think that is the time when you must leave.
You must leave.
So many persons, Dino, reach the age of 65, and we find that they are not able to do that word, to retire, because they would have expended funds or taken on loans for their children at a late age or late stage in their life, and then here comes 65 and they are not ready. Speak to some, I want you to talk to some people about how to not let that happen, that you arrive at this age of 65 and you are not able to do those things when you want, with whom you want, to go where you want to go, and all that stuff. We want to mitigate that,
How do you do that? Proper planning early in life is what helps to mitigate that from happening in your life, or to alleviate you from experiencing this, because we have a number of persons who are working later in their life, not necessarily because they love what they do, but because they have no other choice. How do you not end up in that place? One, you would control the amount of debt that you take on in life. Whether it's in an early stage or a later stage, you would control the amount of money that you take on as debt. Because even if you're a young person, that doesn't mean that you pile on the debt, because the more you pile on the debt, the more money is going out to pay back that loan, which means the less you have to actually save. Or if you take on debt, it's the quality of, or the kind of debt that you take on at a young age. So you would take on assets that would pay you when you are in this 50, 60-year range, so that now you are living off of this, what we call passive income. Right. Passive income is that income that you're not working for, but that comes because of investments and purchasing of assets that you made earlier in your life. And so we can more or less retire earlier when we take on a combination of those things. It's not just saving toward that, it's saving as well as investing.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then let's talk about how do I know, what are my needs for retirement? What's the number of funds? What is that amount that I need? Should we go to a financial planner or something like that, who would be able to tell us what is that number that we need.
Most
You remember I
definitely.
mentioned to you last week that somebody told me if you think you need $1 million to retire, more than likely you need two.
Two.
Talk about that a little bit.
And that is correct because there are so many things that can happen in your retirement age, or what we refer to as the nominal retirement age, which is 60, 70. That is when our bodies start to more or less take on more sickness. If that doesn't happen to everybody, but for a number of persons after 60 and 70, their bodies are starting to now adjust to an older age, and so they are now needing to go to the doctors more. They're now needing to actually repair these houses that they bought 30
Yeah.
years ago. And so roofs, what I'm understanding, normally have 30 or 40 years lifespan. So at the end of your 30-year career, and at the end of you having your house for 30 years, it's now time to perform maintenance.
Right.
And so you have to calculate everything regarding maintenance, regarding your car. Your car doesn't retire with you, so you have to find out what would it take to do several things like service your car, license your car on an annual basis, even things like a flat tire. These are incidentals
Right.
that you have to accrue or kind of take into consideration. And so what a lot of persons don't realize is that they would say, okay, after retirement, I'm done with my mortgage, but it's really the maintenance of life
Yeah.
that really kind of eats away at what you would have saved.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's move from there right into what a lot of people seem to believe is their retirement plan: national insurance.
Yes.
A whole lot of persons, I think they have it in their mind that okay, when I would have retired, I've made all of my contributions. Talk about the ability for someone to live off of national insurance, even when they have not paid what you would call the highest amount, even in the national insurance.
Right.
Talk a little bit about national.
National insurance is intended to be a supplemental income to you, not really to replace the income that you would have been making all of your life. And another thing that I was just thinking about as you were talking is that in the next 3 years, those persons who we refer to as baby boomers, which was, and they call it baby boom because a number of people having a lot of children during that time period between 1946 and 1964, in 3 years they'd be going for retirement, because in 3 years persons who were born in 64 would be 60. And so what happens is this would be a lot of what would have been contributed to national insurance would now be being paid to them in retirement. All right, and persons are living longer now, and so that means then that by the time, truthfully, for those who are in my generation, even those directly behind us, we may not have the benefit of, if we don't increase the amount of national insurance that we pay, having a national insurance. So that isn't really even a savings plan for retirement. And so now when we think about retirement, we have to actually live as if national insurance didn't exist. We have to make personal investments or personal decisions in individual retirement accounts, in owning businesses or finding some other passive income, so that we can now live and plan as if there will be no national insurance. It is expected, even in the United States, their equivalent, which is social services, is expected also to have this same kind of trajectory, because those who would have contributed most to this plan are now headed to retirement, so they're expecting their funds back. And so because of this enormous amount of persons who are retiring, there may not be any for the next generation. So those who are now in their 20s and 30s now, not even thinking about retirement, should now start thinking about, what do I need to invest in the event there will be no national insurance?
Well, and I think that we probably need to pay even greater attention to national insurance and its solvency.
Correct.
I believe, particularly now, because of what has been happening in the last 2 years.
Particularly.
In the last 2 years, we had the devastating storm Dorian, and that put a whole lot of pressure on the system,
Yes.
on our social system. And then immediately following Dorian, then we had the pandemic,
Yes.
where persons' national insurance paid out millions of dollars from its coffers, and without the ability now of these people to go back to work,
Correct.
and to be able to make payments back to them. It's like a double.
Yes.
It's a double whammy.
And when I was in school, out of being graduated from high school in 2002, what happened was they were telling us from then they were expecting national insurance to be depleted by 2030. And so with these events like that doubleheader we had in the past 2 years, that would have taken that number down just by a bit, or that would have accelerated the time that national insurance would be in existence. And so
Right.
now it really behooves us in our generation to take serious attention or pay serious attention to national insurance. And those who are near retirement, okay, it may be too late for them to start a new what do you call it? A new individual retirement account. So my thing with them would really be find something that you're good at, find a way to make passive income. If you got to make potato bread, make potato bread. If you got to make cassava bread, make cassava bread.
Yeah.
To get into that, start developing systems whereas you can get additional income.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, this is that important that we need to take seriously what is happening in our country.
Definitely.
With what the pandemic has done, the thousands of persons who would have been without jobs, the slowdown in the economy as a result of that. And let me say this about government, because sometimes, a lot of times, people believe that the government really can just go and print money. Government doesn't print money. It means that they're going to have to find a way then to try to recoup
Definitely.
these funds that were paid out during these last, we're going on like 13, 14 months now. And that means further, that there will be taxes to come.
Which means less income.
Less income. And so we've got to really get our
we have to
shoulders to the
we
wheel.
have to now develop creative methods to increase our income. That's the bottom line. We have to now realize that we are no longer in the same state that we were in. And even if the government would essentially print money, that would mean then that inflation or the cost of goods would go up. With that being said, it means that the cost of your living would then go up. And so now we have to now determine what are the skills that we bring to the table? Like the prophet asks the widow woman in 2 Kings 4, what is in your house that you can now put to work so that it brings back funds to you?
Right.
We have to develop a society where we are raising more persons who are entrepreneurs in additional employees.
Right.
And that is the route that we have to take.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned a little earlier about IRA. What is an IRA?
An IRA is an individual retirement account. So what happens is outside of what your work would have put together for you, the plan that your work or you get through your job, this is you taking your own funds and investing 5 or 10 or 15% into this private fund that works along with whatever your job is putting together. Because the reason that is important is, one, companies can decide at any day that they can decrease the amount that they're putting into your into your retirement account, or they can say, okay, we aren't putting in our portion anymore. Whatever you put in, that is what you will have to kind of live off of. And so you have to, because of all of these scenarios, and because you may not even work at a place anymore for 30 years, you want to ensure that you have your personal individual retirement account set aside.
Now let me say right here, because someone listening to us right now, they are thinking, Pastor, about people making hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that person who is working at McDonald's and they're working at Dunkin' Donuts, or they feel like they're working at such a small? I can't. And their mindset is that I have nothing to be able to put it in a retirement account. Talk to that person.
The good thing is that with a retirement account, just like any other investment, Albert Einstein says that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. It's not really about the amount that you're putting in, it's the time frame that you have been saving. And so even if you save $20, $30, $40 a month on this, and you start at, say, 20, 21, 22,
Right.
by the time that you are 60, that you may be thinking about retirement, or even 50, which is 30 years ahead, you would have made enough funds to have at least $500,000 perhaps in your individual retirement account based on what the interest rate is that they give you. And a lot of retirement accounts are actually pegged or put into stocks.
Right.
And so what happens is over time, stocks recoup their money and you get a bigger amount. So it's not about really the amount as much as it is the time frame.
I trust that you heard him very clearly, because Dino talks a little fast sometimes.
I'm
I trust
sorry.
you heard him say,
I'm sorry.
it does not matter the amount. Listen to that. It is the extent, the period now that you're going to be doing it for. So if saving $20 a month or $30 a month, it counts.
It does.
So we're not talking about persons who making $1,000 a week
No.
or anything. You're just taking your $20, your $10, whatever you have, and you are disciplining yourself by putting it in a savings account.
And you know, statistics show that persons who have self-discipline to do this over a longer period of time and in retirement with more money than people who make the six figures per year.
There you
Because
go.
those who make six figures per year take advantage of it, think that, okay, I can live off of this, and they make some high-risk investments, whereas those who save a little at a time, over time, and Proverbs tells us about this, that saving a little bit over time for an extended period of time is what causes a person to be wealthy at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's real. That caused me to reflect, on some of my family members who live in the family islands. Because what it takes for you to live down here in Nassau, it certainly doesn't take for them to live in another environment,
Correct.
So when they make $1,000, that $1,000 can go much further up there than it would down here, because basically they don't have these big expenses.
But you know, the truth be told, even Pastor Huler, even on the islands, though the cost of living is more,
yes.
they've learned how to maximize the art of community. They may not make as much as those in Nassau. The cost of living may be a lot, but you can always go down by Jackie and get
Yes.
some food. I could always go on top of the hill and get some food. I could always go home and get some food. We have to understand that if we're going to be living and maximizing wealth, we have to make the necessary hard decisions at the beginning so that we can enjoy at the tail end. We have to actually learn several things. Pandemic taught us. One, the art about community.
Right.
The next thing it taught us is what is considered unessential. And we learned how to live outside of what we thought was mandatory, and we've learned how to focus on the essential things. The third thing is we've understood and learned that one income is not enough.
Right.
We've learned that when that one income has shut down, we have to be creative and develop another income. And so we're learning these things, and hopefully when the pandemic lifts, as it will, because seasons and cycles always change, I'm hoping that we learned the lessons that were necessary.
Right. It's not what you make; it is what you save.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about dealing with debt. How do I deal with debt in anticipation of retirement?
How do you deal with debt? The first thing is that ensure that whatever debt you're getting, it's being borrowed for an asset or something that increases in value, or it's something that increases your value that you bring to the table. So that would be something like education, that would cause you to be a person of value, and you offer your services. How do you control debt in anticipation for retirement as well? Is ensuring too that you're paying your debt on time. Ensuring that you're only borrowing what you're able to pay back, and now living life as if you don't need this thing. We have to be realistic as it relates to handling debt.
Yeah.
And a number of us, and I say us because I'm a part of it, we took on early debt because we figured that is what one ought to do to build capital. But what I've learned over time is that your character in a bank can also be determined by how consistently you put money in your savings account. What I've learned also is that you can get a small credit card and pay your monthly expenses, pay that off with the same cash you would have paid your monthly expenses with, and build up your credit history over time. We did not have the right education to maximize our wealth, and so you have a lot of persons who are struggling now with debt that they don't even remember where they got it for. But at this rate, the key is stop, review what you have, and don't get into any more until you substantially bring down what you have now.
Okay. Let's talk about something that it happens, I think, rather frequently. You talked about persons getting into debt early,
Yes, sir.
but when I look at this and dealing with debt in anticipation of retirement, there are so many people, that find themselves arriving at that late stage, 60 to 65, and maybe they had children later on in their lives, and their child needs to go off to school. The child didn't get a scholarship, and they wanted to further their educational pursuits, and mommy goes to the bank and indebts herself
Yes.
for the education of a child. What do you say? Is there a particular age that you'll say, I think that you ought to, I know what your heart is telling you, that you really want to do this, but talk about the wisdom of that, and should they do that?
That's a tough decision when you have to make a decision between your head and your heart.
Right.
But at that point, if the child decides to go to pursue education, that's a tough place, because the child would then be expected to pay back this loan. And so I would not advise a parent who is in their retirement to get into debt, to pay off, to more or less get into debt for a child who has their entire life ahead of them to get this college education, when the parent is at the winding down stage of their financial obligations. I would not advise a parent to do that. I would advise the parent to explain to the child, I'm coming to the end of this, let the child find other routes to get this money, because the child perhaps can go ahead and now get a loan because they have a longer time frame to pay off that loan. But I would not advise a parent at the end of their working life to get this done, because that cripples them. And I've heard and I've seen too many stories of parents who got to this place, took on debt for their children, and the children didn't remember them.
Yeah, I mean, this is real. They not only, let's say, even if they remember them, the fact of the matter is that it is so late in their life,
Yes.
that they're reaching on 65. The child is still off in school,
Right.
and that causes them then to have to go back and seek employment after retirement somewhere else even.
Precisely.
And so that's what I was saying. I don't know if there's a particular number that you can say, listen, when you arrive at this age and you look at the years that it would take you to repay it, it might be unwise to do that.
I would say look toward your retirement age, and treat it like how the banks would treat mortgages. They stop giving mortgages within, I suppose, 10 or 15 years of your retirement age, because they would say they need to get the money back before you stop working where you're working.
Right.
And so I would say take that same model and look at, you calculate up to your retirement age, and don't get anything that will exceed your age of retirement. So if that means you have 3 years out to retirement, and if the bank would even be willing to lend you, don't exceed your retirement age. That I would say gauge it based on the year that you want to stop working.
Okay, there you go. That's a difficult one. A choice between
Your head and your heart,
head
that's rough.
and your heart. I'll give you another one, Ambassador, that where persons in the Bahamas normally get into trouble with their finances, even as they get older. They have a situation where it's very unfortunate that a family member has an illness,
Yes.
and that really is life changing. And the person, what should that person do? Do they get into debt? And that's my loved one. These are
real situations,
Yeah.
because persons have to face this. I would say, as much as you can, get government assistance wherever you're able to do that. There's also GoFundMe where you can actually go out and say, listen, this is the need for this family, and see how much you can garner there. But try to do all those things before you get into the debt. Let debt be your last resolve. Go to family members and try to get $5, $10, $15,000 here, or even say, okay, I'll pay you back, but I'll give me this kind of agreement. Go to where, instead of going to the bank and getting this high debt, even try to work at a commitment with persons you know, to say, okay, I'll pay you back. I may not have the interest. The bank may charge me 14%. I'll pay you back 10, or I'll pay you back 7%. Try alternative investments, or not investments, but alternative loans, or ways to borrow, so that you won't have to get into this high and hefty debt. Because for that short period of time, for the bank to get as much as they can, and because they see you as a risk, they're going to increase that interest rate so that they can get as much money as they can. So in terms like that, where persons are ill, we live in a compassionate enough society to get some funding from GoFundMe. We live in a compassionate society where we can go ahead and have the cookout or whatever like that. But avoid debt. Let debt be your very last resort.
Yeah, I thought I'd bring that up because it is such a, I think, health, the cost of health and trying to keep our loved ones alive. It's a real hard issue, as we mentioned, and it seems to me to be very regularly now that people are actually ravishing themselves with their funds because of health issues, either with their children or with their parents, that they go into debt. And it's really, really unfortunate that we find ourselves in
and
this
that is
situation.
something too we have to get I would say, I don't know how much they can get into it, but find a way that we can talk to our legislators or something to have some safety net in place. Because the truth of the matter is, it's not that people don't want medical insurance when they retire. The cost of it is so exorbitant that they can't even afford to get this medical insurance. And so we have to find a way to work together again as a cooperative society to develop funding for persons who would have worked 30, 40 years and have some kind of, and this is where we reach out to persons like credit unions and all these other non-banks who can actually pool together some resources and get these things done.
Okay, so maybe, Pastor, what we can talk about is, so when you, as financial planners and advisors, right, based on our environment, the Bahamas, we know basically what our health challenge is.
Correct.
Is a part of financial planning, like dietary, health-wise, exercise? Let's talk about that and how fundamental that might actually be towards people actually being able to have a healthy retirement at the end of the day, funds-wise and body-wise.
Definitely. You would find that if we take care of, just the same way we do with our money, we do with our body. If we take care of our body in our younger ages, in our younger years, chances are our body will return the favor to us as we get older. And so we have to train our children, even to our teens, the same way we treat and we train them financially in school, like we are proposing, we train them health-wise. We also have to make decisions on how to get a healthy diet even in younger ages, and the same way it is to have medical insurance, it's just as expensive to live healthy. And so we have to now inculcate this, bring this into our national conversation on the importance of health, on the importance of eating properly, on the importance of taking care of your body, which is the temple of the Lord, on the importance of all this. So when a financial planner may not get into that because that's not the area of expertise, but what they can do is refer the person who they're talking to a dietitian or somebody to be a part of this.
Actually, if it's one thing that COVID, the pandemic, did teach us as well, is that many persons got their backyard farms going together and growing.
Definitely.
My wife now has she has a little area now, and she's growing beets and onions and lettuce and all kinds of other little things that I see there that you can actually go and reap now and actually eat healthy.
Definitely.
That you don't have to actually buy from the food store.
What we did, and I know the Christian Council has a program in place, and even our church, what our church did was we got 10 of those backyard farming kits, and a number of persons who are part of that move or initiative are actually having fun with this growing food and everything in the back of the yard, because I believe that one of the blessings of COVID was teaching us, like we said, the essentials on saving money, on eating healthy, and even on the whole thing about sanitation. It's kind of resetting the world, and it'll be a pity if we go through this and don't learn our lessons.
Yes, it's and I know people here is talking about this dieting, and you heard me bring this in and about exercise, because all of this, these are all synergistic. They all work hand in hand to help us to be able to live a longer, healthier life where it would not devastate your income.
And you know,
at the end of the day.
The interesting thing is we say that it's very healthy to eat healthy now, but it's even more healthy to maintain your body if you don't eat healthy now.
Right.
So you either pay less on the early end, or you pay more on the later end.
Right. I remember, I don't know if you probably are a little younger and they would have been more educated, but I had an aunt when we were growing up in Exuma. She what should I say? She despised skinny children. Yes, what she said. Because a lot of babies have this is an old adage that you fatten children up,
right?
So that if they get sick, they can take a little bit of it.
They get something to burn off.
And I recall my mother did that to one of my nieces, and they never put that weight off. So these are some of the things that get our children into these eating habits.
Yes.
And then at the end of the day, they're very difficult to break.
Yes, because childhood obesity is something that we have to control as well.
There you go. And at the end of the day, we end up with these non-communicable diseases that the Bahamas is known for. High blood pressure and diabetes that are killers. And these diseases would take down anyone's finances.
Definitely.
Brothers and sisters, we must, in addition to all the stuff we talk about, we must do our best and to start to train our children to eat their fruits and vegetables while they're early and stay off the fatty stuff. Stay out of some of these fast food places with them. And I know some of you, the kids love them. You're there from morning for breakfast, and then they're back there in the evening after they leave school and going back home consuming salt, and they're getting diabetes early. Please, brothers and sisters, we can help ourselves to not ravage our income that we have in order to sustain us in our older age.
Yes, sir.
Well, as we get nearer to the end, Pastor, we don't want to end this without talking about something that is soon to come.
Yes.
I don't know when it will be, but I understand it's coming soon now. Let's talk about the imminent introduction of the credit bureau in the Bahamas. First of all, let's talk about what is the credit bureau and what is it expected to do.
Okay, so a credit bureau is essentially an agency or an organization that collects all the information based on a person's credit or their borrowing history, and not only their history, but how much they are actually paying back and if they're paying back on time. So in 2019, the Credit Reporting Act was set into place, was placed in the Parliament. It was passed in Parliament, and so as of last year, January 2020, the Central Bank of the Bahamas would have engaged a company to more CRIF, called CRIF, the acronym is CRIF. And what they're doing is from 2020 last year, January last year, they would start collecting information on persons' paying habits when they talk about your loans and everything like that. And so it is anticipated that this project would run for 18 months. And then it will continue after this, but they're going to have information based on the past 18 months effective this summer. And so either at midsummer or at the end of summer, you're gonna be able to get your first credit report. All right, and this credit report is basically, as an adult, your report card on how you would have been paying back your loans, how, if you were late, if you were delinquent, and so this is essentially what is anticipated to happen.
Okay, so let me see if I can get this clear. So every person that has a bank account, is that how it is?
No,
Or a
it's
loan?
who has a loan
Everyone who has a loan
or credit card,
or
any
credit card,
any facility, any credit facility.
um, there will be a company that has all of that information,
Correct.
and they would be able to tell your entire history about how you are doing with how you are paying off your indebtedness.
Correct.
All right, and they're gonna have the right to see your information.
The company does.
company does,
Now your bank, if you are going, so particularly, this is how it works. They collect all of this information and they give you a score. So when we watch American television, you hear about this credit report, credit score,
Yeah.
that more or less tells you how much you can borrow, or it can tell you how much down payment you would need to pay, or it would tell you how much your interest rate would be when you go to the bank. And so this is more or less your negotiating tool when you go to borrow from the bank. Now, the bank can't just automatically go to the credit bureau and request your information. You would have to give them the approval to go ahead and say, okay, you can go and get this information, because this information is still yours.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you want to get this loan, you would have to get this credit report. The interesting thing is that this goes beyond that. All right? What happens is, for the past 18 months, they would have been collecting on commercial banks, on credit unions, whatever banks or whatever institutions come under the central bank,
Right.
they would have been collecting information on them.
Right.
So what happens now is that this credit report is not only beneficial to the bank who's lending you, even if you have places on rent. As a landlord, before you receive a tenant, you can ask them, but in addition to your down payment, your first, last, and security,
Yeah.
I need to see your credit. I would want to see
see
your credit report. Now, I can't go there and request it for you.
Yeah.
But you, because that's your information, I can ask you to provide that for me. So it works it more or
can
less.
enhance, or it can-
It helps us to also determine the behavior of people, because people will now be more inclined to pay on time. They'll be more inclined to know their due date. They'll be more inclined to decrease or inhibit the amount of debt that they take on.
Okay. With this credit bureau, how does that affect now me getting loans from another bank when I have one at this bank? And these, we get these loans, we say to take care of the loan, but we really don't take care of the loan.
That is true. Well, the thing is, how it is supposed to work, before that bank gives you that debt consolidation loan, they're supposed to get a stamped copy that this was paid off at another bank. All right, so they're supposed to get that. Now, if that didn't happen, then that's a bigger problem that we have to look at.
Right.
But what happens is, this would have all of the information that may not even show up on your payslip. What banks would have found was that persons would present a payslip that
Yeah.
doesn't show all of the loans that are out there.
Yeah.
Now, the credit bureau would start probably with banks, but pretty soon it'll extend to those smaller micro business
Yeah.
loans.
Yeah.
So you have a number of them popping up now that tell you, okay, if we're going to give you $10,000, just pay this amount every week, and they're not
Yeah.
your conventional banks,
Right.
but all of them at some point in the future will be on this. Even how you pay your utility companies, so how you pay BPL, BTC, all of this would show up, because this essentially shows your ability to not only repay loans, but
Right.
repay them on time.
Okay, so that's all of the information that covers on this report. What you were saying just now, your BPL payments, your phone payments, water and sewage, everything would be a part of that.
Essentially,
All
yeah.
of this will be on one's credit
On this
report.
one credit report.
And then based on your income, then and your income and your spending habits, they will give you a score. Is that tell me about
The
the
score essentially is based on how you repay. It doesn't really
okay.
indicate your income. It really doesn't affect your income.
Income,
It's actually how you are paying
Your
back your
ability
bills.
to pay, okay,
Right.
okay.
It's how you pay back your bills. That's why
Okay.
we tell persons, even if they get a small credit card, even for the person who worked at a place that makes minimum wage,
Yeah.
and they get a small credit card, and they pay back their credit card before the time every month, they're building up a healthy credit score so
Right.
they can borrow more for assets that they need.
Right.
The good thing about this is that a lot of banks were prohibitive in their lending because, one, a number of private institutions don't give salary deduction. And so they were leaning more toward the civil service because they are sure they can get
Yes.
salary deduction.
Right.
And so what happens now is this now allows persons to have better negotiating skill, opportunities when they
Yeah.
go to the bank.
Right.
Because the thing is that it means that I can now ask the bank to give me a better rate because I'm a good payer, and you can be sure that I can pay this back. And so now not everybody who goes into the bank will pay the same interest rate.
Right. So then what you're saying too is that there is or there could be a disadvantage to a person who does not have or cannot show the ability to repay. Let's
Correct.
say so it's not good all the time to pay everything cash. You would not have a good
Correct.
report.
You don't have a report to show your credit, your ability to pay back debt that you have.
Yes, yeah.
Now a lot of people will look at this and say, I don't want to get into debt. And I understand.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt to get, and this sounds so against what financial planners say. It wouldn't hurt for you getting a credit card that you can manage.
Right.
You're paying these bills every month anyway.
Yeah.
So why not just swipe them on the card, pay them the regular way that you would normally pay so that you can build up a report or a history on how you repay loans.
Right. That is something on paper to demonstrate that you can pay.
Definitely.
Okay. What protections are in place for me as a borrower?
In terms of the credit bureau?
Yes.
Okay, the protections are this. One, they can't request your information without your approval. The second thing as a borrower is that you can now negotiate. You can negotiate based on the bank. It may change. I don't know what the particulars are, what banks are going to do going forward, but you can negotiate the rate that you want to borrow from or borrow at with this credit report. Because there's no reason why me as a good payer I should pay the same high interest as someone who doesn't pay, because interest rate is really a reflection of how the bank views you as a risk to them.
Right.
All right, and the risk being a person who can't pay back loans. If I have a history of paying back loans, then I should be able to negotiate, and I can carry this as my paper to say, okay, this bank tells me they're going to offer me 15%. I'm coming here to this next bank because I have a good report. I should be able to get 14%. And there were some talks even with persons who can actually use this as a negotiating tool to determine how much down payment as a borrower I would have to come down with. Because again, your down payment is a reflection of the risk that they view you as a person, or the risk of that asset that you're going to get into.
Yes. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, this is on the way. Did you say when this was going to happen?
By summer or right after summer. It's an 18-month window that they were looking at, and they started collecting information last January. It's interesting. They asked the governor on a radio show, are you going to halt it because of COVID? He said no. He said no. We're still collecting the information, because at the end of the day, we're not only looking at stopping persons who are bad payers. We want to give opportunities to persons who are good payers.
Okay, and that leads me, and that segues me right into my next question. Like, so what is the good of the credit bureau? Because it sounds as if it's there to basically protect other entities, other
Yes.
financial entities from bad payers.
Correct.
Those even who are in business, landlords, and so on. So what's the
What's the benefit of having the credit bureau?
benefits, yeah.
Okay, the good thing, one is that banks can now offer better rates, because a number of banks, their money is tied up in what is called provisioning. Provisioning is money they have to set aside for every bad loan they have. So every loan that isn't being paid back, the bank has to put aside cash to kind of balance what they have as called bad loans. So the more cash they put aside is more cash they can lend. The less cash they can lend means that because the supply is high, the supply is low, and the demand is high, it means then that the cost to borrow this would be high. So bank loans would be high and this is just economics. Of course, real world it's kind of different. But economics says where the supply is low and the demand is high, the price for that loan, which is the interest rate, will be high. So that's a good thing. The second thing is that banks would have better ratings. Okay, so you have banks that have better ratings. So the country overall would have a better rating as it relates to debt and the ability for its people to pay its debt. The third good thing about it is that as a landlord, you can now be able to siphon your tenants better because now before you don't know the history of this person coming into your place, and so now it kind of gives you a good character reference for this person to say, okay, if they take the time to pay their loan, they have a better chance, hopefully, to pay me back. So that's good for landlords as well. The next thing for borrowers is good. Like we said, we can negotiate your interest rates, your down payments, and everything like that. And the next thing that the credit bureau does, which is an advantage to the country, is it actually helps to curb the behavior of our people from not paying back, from not paying their bills, from actually taking on too much debt. Because at this point, because I now have a clear picture of what you actually owe, I can tell you no.
Right.
Which can actually save you in the long run, because a number of persons would have concealed what they would have owed so that they can take on more debt for things they don't really need.
Right.
And so now this helps to curb the behavior of people, and the central bank calls this kind of thing like a moral suasion. They can't tell you what to borrow, but they can kind of put in place mechanisms so that it can kind of determine the kind of behavior of the people, and so this would help in the long run the financial state of the country.
I got you. So if I have, I know that I'm kind of maxed out borrowing at Royal Bank. I know I can't go back there, but so what I do is I go to another bank, Scotia, and say, okay, listen, I want to borrow this and that. But because they don't really know exactly, find out for sure exactly what you have with it, they can go ahead and give you.
Because truth of the matter is, you have some instances, and I say this very carefully, you have some instances where persons in the bank will call another bank to get your information. To say, hey, listen, Pastor, you don't have any loans there. Yeah. That's illegal. I mean, truth be told, that's illegal, right? But because small society, everybody knows somebody, they call them, but that's illegal. What happens is that the credit bureau would now alleviate all of that, and you just can say, okay, can I see your credit report? The thing is that banks don't have to ask for it, but the banks have the ability to ask for it, and so that's why we need to ensure that that all of the information on this is actually accurate. And the good thing about this too is that if you have a credit report that is not accurate, you get a free credit report every year. You get one free credit report every year as an individual. So what happens is you can look at this and see, this particular bank forgot to take this off my record. You can now go back to the credit bureau and say, this is incorrect. The credit bureau has a certain amount of time to go to that bank and say, okay, this customer said this is incorrect. Can you please look at your records again to make sure? And you can clean up your credit history that kind of way. And so every year you can see this credit report to see exactly where you stand.
Okay, now we've been seeing this for years actually, on US TV.
Of course.
Where they are always showing this thing about credit score. So could you say that one more time? What is a credit score?
The credit score is a reflection or a report of your ability or inability to pay your debt. Okay, so the lower your score, the more negatively you're impacted in terms of your down payment, interest rate, all of that, or what you can actually qualify for. And the higher your credit score, the more negotiating power you have.
Okay, that's what it is.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. We're winding down, and here's one more question I have for you on credit score. Who has access to my credit score information? Who has access to that?
The credit bureau is the repository for this information. No one can access this until or unless you give them the approval to do that. So it is just as private to you as your medical records. No one can get this except you give approval to do it.
Right.
Yeah, so even your bank, where you have your loan and your history, cannot go ahead and make a request for this. Your husband, your wife can't even make a request for this. You have to make a request for this yourself.
Okay, wonderful. I wanted us to be able to give some information on that, ladies and gentlemen, to help us to prepare, because I don't know how much we will appreciate this credit bureau, but it's going to save a whole lot of us.
Yes.
From binge spending just grabbing everything that we can put our hands on, getting ourselves in debt. Because at the end of the day, what you do not want to do for yourself, the credit bureau will. It will curtail you from doing
It
so.
will either use self-discipline or
Or
it
they
will
will
discipline you. The key is, yeah, Pastor Euler, is that it also helps us to become more informed. This is
Right.
part of financial literacy.
Right.
You are more informed about what you owe. Because, like I often say, and I'll say quickly, when persons first get their loan, they may have been getting paid twice a month, 16th and 30th. Over the course of their of time, they may have switched jobs where they now get paid once a month on the 30th.
Right.
However, that first loan was still due on the 16th of every month.
Right.
And what happens now is you're paying now on the 30th of every month because you're in a new place and you're getting paid once a month,
Yeah.
but now your loan is 14 days late.
Right.
Okay, and this affects you, and so you're paying late fees, or you're paying, or you're in their books as a bad payer, when you just really didn't remember that
Yeah.
when you first got this loan, what your due date is. So what happens is it forces us to now go back to banks to find out, when is my due date, what's the amount that I have to pay every month, and let me pay that on a consistent basis, so it improves our behavior.
Okay. Well, Pastor Dino,
Hopefully.
believe it or not, this brings us to the end of
Wow.
program number 3. And just before we close this program, we were speaking to you. This is segment number 3 on financial planning and retirement. I just want you to take a moment or two and just tell our guests the importance once again of financial planning, the importance of saving for when you get to an age that you cannot work anymore, so that you will be able to enjoy the latter part of your life without a whole lot of stress. Just take a few moments and do that there.
Sure. Thank you so much. The Bible tells us explicitly, money answereth all things. Wherever things are related in your life, money has the answer for that. So what happens is we have to be good stewards over that which God has given us. Every time He gives us money in our hand, it is considered seed for our lives. What we do with our seed will determine the harvest that we get. I often tell persons that money is not a prayer issue as much as it's a principle issue. If you work the principle, you will always have the funds. All right? So we have to learn that in life, we have to work the offense and the defense of money. We have to save and get out of debt, but we also have to take the risk to invest. Don't do any of these things without getting the proper financial tools and information that you need from a qualified financial planner. Sit down. You won't go to a mechanic for body issues. You won't go to a doctor for car issues. At the same way, we advise persons to go to persons who are skilled in financial planning to get ideas on what to do with their money. The key is that if you want for a successful financial life, you have to become financially literate. You have to know not only what to do, where money is coming from, but you have to know what to do with the money when you get it. And so we challenge persons to God watches how you spend your money, because how you spend your money determines how good of a steward you are. And management in kingdom goes beyond just giving God back what He's given you. It's multiplying what He has given you. There's an expectancy from God to give back what He has given you. And so whether it's savings, investing, debt reduction, or retirement, all of this happens when you make the right decisions and become financially literate. So my challenge to you is to find a financial advisor who can help walk you through this process until you can fly and be able to bless somebody else. Because to bless somebody else is what God wants to do through you as He blesses you, to be a blessing.
Pastor Dino, thank you so much for being on Salem Speaks.
Thank you, sir.
Certainly we enjoyed it. I trust that everyone would have gotten a whole lot of answers over the past 3 weeks. I know I did. I learned a whole lot over the last 3 weeks from what you presented. And certainly we pray for God's blessings upon you. Next week on Salem Speaks, as a matter of fact, before I say what's going to happen next week, Sunday coming is Mother's Day. And so please get ready to be a blessing to your mothers on this coming Sunday. We welcome you to come and worship with us on this Mother's Day. We'll have a Mother's Day service here at Salem beginning at 10 o'clock. And then on next week's program of Salem Speaks, we will be dealing with a topic that speaks to women's health, how we want mothers to be more healthy so that they can bring up their children to live a long, healthy, and productive life, that they can be agents of influence not only for their children, but indeed to the kingdom of God on the whole. Thank you so much once again for joining us. Have a blessed rest of the evening, and we'll see you next week.